Hi there, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to Tracking Time, what every people leader needs to know. So I'm your host for today's live broadcast. So let me just take a moment to introduce myself, and I'll give you a little bit of background on Apogee HR as well. So my name is Harriet Bosher, and I look after the communications and marketing strategy here at Apogee HR, and I've been doing so for nearly 3 years now. So Apogee HR has been going since around 2009, and we're proud specialists in the people software industry. So we focus on HR, lead management, time tracking, mostly for forward-thinking companies such as yourselves, with over a decade of experience supporting the SME market. So just to get started, I'll run through our agenda. So today's broadcast will take around 20 minutes or so, and I'm going to be looking at the following key points. So firstly, I'm going to kick off by quickly introducing an overview of tracking time and what I mean by that on a more basic level. And next, I'll be looking at why project-based work is the future of work. So some of you may have already downloaded our white paper on this, which I will send out as part of the follow-up comms tomorrow. But it's a very interesting idea on how you can use specific skill sets to assign work rather than the traditional role-based way of working. Then I'll be looking at employee productivity and well-being and how time tracking links in there. And then finally, how managers and HR can use this data to help prevent the great resignation or great reset, which is something that's been talked about a lot over the last sort of 18 months plus. So just to briefly kick off the presentation, what exactly do I mean by time tracking? So essentially, tracking employee time is all about looking at work they're doing, so projects, customers, or tasks, and recording how much time each staff member is spending on these areas. It's traditionally used in accountancy firms, creative agencies, law firms, and also sort of IT firms to record time taken up on projects. So what your staff are working on essentially. So it includes being able to look at things like managing forecasting, budgeting, your actuals and analysis, and tracking against specific roles within the business, as well as allowing senior managers to have oversight on all things such as billable and non-billable utilisation against customers, i.e. sort of who's getting the free work. By tracking time in this way, it's great to see what you're billing out and who's getting what work done. So you can really analyse the profitability of your customers and projects that you're taking on. If targets are not being met, time tracking additionally allows managers to determine whether anticipated completion rates were too ambitious. Perhaps more resource needs to be allocated to ensure projects can be caught up with, put back on track or rebudgeted. Or perhaps the lessons of overly ambitious project timeframes can be learned, just so these things don't get so eagerly next time. In short, it's really vital for managers that they're able to see all these things and take any action required. However, a really big key benefit of tracking time is to look at your employees and being able to properly analyse what they're working on and how many days a week they might be billable for, how long certain work is taking, and even when they're taking breaks and starting and finishing work, with the latter being obviously particularly important if you've moved your company to a fully remote or hybrid model. So on that, I'm going to get started with, or move on rather, to project-based work and how this links to your employee wellbeing and also the Great Reset. So to start off with, this idea of project-based work, it's really the idea that rather than staff being defined by their job title, tasks have increasingly been divided according to whoever bosses think has the skills to do it. So it's coincidentally, or maybe perhaps conveniently, links to this idea that people want more out of their career than just a specific role. Following this idea of the Great Reset, people are now defining their careers less about length of service, status, and scaling up the corporate ladder, and more about acquiring flexibility and agility and the ability to stay relevant by learning more. So workers' changing priorities have evolved in parallel with companies' own need to be more nimble and responsive, as well as needing to have a more contingent workforce. So companies are now really styling themselves far more as ecosystems where they draw upon the diverse skill sets of their universe of full-time or freelance teams to really meet specific business challenges and help employees stay more engaged. So it's this quest by both employers and employees to be more nimble that has seen a gradual shift towards project-based working. So according to Accenture, around 80% of executives it surveyed feel the future of work will be project-based rather than role-based. And it's one that suggests will only increase due to the pandemic and the adoption of more sort of hybrid working too. So project-based work is attractive because it sets clear goals, milestones and deliverables, as well as having defined start and end dates, the movement to which can be tracked over time. Moreover, I think projects still very much lend themselves to outcome-orientated thinking. So this is where what's achieved is really celebrated over what it took to get there. So really looking at output here. Ultimately, enterprises need more than ever to be able to plan and understand how much time, so the predicted as well as the actual, a task will take for budgeting decisions to be made. Statistically, around 85% of projects typically go over budget, often because sort of time creep occurs or because the component elements do not get, sort of the smaller elements don't get this time goal set against them. So better time management is also required to ensure kind of mid-project milestones can be set and met. By doing so, any delays able to be flagged up in advance before they become too costly. So project-based work can also really help identify where you might have a skills shortage in your teams and therefore where you might be losing out on business from clients, and what kind of staff skills you need to hire in to help produce the best work, or where you need to train your current staff. I'll be looking into this, how this sort of links into the Great Resignation, because there's a great link here, but I just wanted to touch first on this idea of well-being and productivity. So employee well-being is a really huge topic right now, with a lot of talk around this idea of Zoom fatigue and burnout. And this idea of working from home has, for some, perpetuated the idea of an always-on culture, meaning that many employees are working longer hours, with a survey from Hayes actually suggesting that over half of employees work longer hours, and even around 40 to 52%, depending on the level of seniority, were also working actually during annual leave. And this idea of working longer hours, unfortunately, doesn't necessarily mean higher levels of output. So the University of Essex and the University of Chicago found that output hasn't increased with inflated hours. Now, there's a few reasons for this. Obviously, during the pandemic, this was linked to childcare, maybe years' experience in work, but there was also a fairly dramatic increase in meetings across working from home, meaning there was less time for this idea of productive output, as this was also sort of linked to the idea of Zoom fatigue, so these obviously were online meetings. So you might be thinking, well, the answer must be back to the office then, surely. Well, as many of you will attest to, it's really not that simple either. And the CIPD have reported that around 80% of staff want more flexibility to be able to work from home. However, this idea of targeted working from home regimes, or hybrid working, as many people are calling it, allows for the best of both worlds for those with sort of longer commutes who may work better from home, especially now that children are back at school. I think this idea of working from home will get more productive, and it's obviously something employees enjoy. So this idea of office and home mix is a good idea. So tracking well-being and productivity is obviously linked to working hours, and with this idea of hybrid becoming more popular, it's clear that employers need to make sure they're fully able to track working hours, breaks, and tracking time spent on projects rather than in meetings, just to make sure that staff are using their time in the best possible way to allow for this sort of output. So allowing staff to track these areas doesn't only help senior management with oversight into work and customer data, but it can also really help line managers see where other employees are likely to burn out potentially. So linking this in with this taking annual leave and knowing when your staff are off and shouldn't be working is another kind of clever hack that many project time tracking solutions don't really provide, as well as linking it into who's off sick for whatever reason. So that could be stress, for example, which obviously links into well-being as well. And equally important is being able to see who's billable too often. And with that, I will just move on to how tracking time can help your company avoid the Great Resignation. So this great reset or great resignation is a huge topic. It's come out of this idea in the US relating to the ongoing trend of employees voluntarily leaving their jobs from around sort of spring 2021 to the present. Although it began in relation to the US workforce, it's a trend that's definitely made its way overseas to the UK and Europe. It's also been exacerbated in the UK, obviously, by the ongoing Brexit effects. There's a more global idea that the pandemic and lockdowns have really forced everyone into thinking about what matters and what we want from life. And as around 40 hours a week is spent in work, it's really been a top of mind priority for many people around, what do I actually want to do in life? How do I actually want to spend my time? So by tracking time spent on certain projects or customers, managers and HR can easily see who isn't getting time for things that might be important to their careers. So essentially, if you have staff that are billable 40 hours a week, maybe even on the same kinds of projects, maybe they're a little bit dull, they're not being able to spend time on training and development or on different kinds of projects, that might help to make their job a bit more interesting, enhance their learning and enhance their careers. Linked into this is ensuring that employees are having enough check-ins regularly on top of their performance reviews to ensure they're also getting enough feedback on their work. Now, this is because feedback is really the one thing, and it comes up time and time again in my research, it's really the one thing that many employees say they want more of. So feedback on how they're performing and what they could do better, how they can feel more part of an organisation and its goals. It was recently found that 92% of workers said when they're recognised for specific tasks, they're more likely to do them again well, which is really proof that these conversations really do matter to staff. And what's really clear is that just by being able to sort of facilitate this, time tracking gives employees insights into crucial parts of the jigsaw that they comprise. It really helps facilitate conversations around how and where they fit into an organisation and also where they want to be. So by having more conversations around where employee time is being spent, whether or not they'd be keen to move on to different projects or customers, and how long their working hours are, and obviously if they're taking breaks, it really helps give staff a sense that their company cares about them, knows them really well, knows what they're doing, and that's in return for the commitment that they're making to the company. So linking this back into the Great Resignation is this idea of being valued and knowing where somebody fits within an organisation. It's often coming up as a driver for staff to stay in their jobs. So by looking at all of your time tracking data alongside your HR data, it can really help you identify some of the following points. So sort of where are skills not being used properly for project-based work, where staff aren't taking enough time off or enough breaks, who's due a performance review, who's billable 40 hours a week and doesn't have enough time for learning and development, who might be on the same projects for so long they're becoming less productive, who's taking a lot of time off sick or on the flip side, working during their annual leave. And all of this is alongside all of the reasons you normally look at your project time tracking. So your budgeting, your forecasting, and your billable and non-billable utilizations, which are really critical for your business. So that's about it for today. It was a brief look at why tracking time is so important, not just for your customers and your projects, but also for your employees, and how it can help retain your employees. That link into employee data is kind of the next step on how project time tracking can really benefit your company. So thank you for listening, and apologies, but I'm about to move on here to the sales pitch, but I will keep it very brief. So at Apogee HR, as I mentioned earlier, we're a people software solutions company, and we provide project time tracking software called Apogee Time alongside other packages. So Time can be purchased separately or as an add-on to any of our other products. So our other products are Leave, so that's for simple leave and sickness tracking. HR Essentials includes leave management, but also has your kind of core HR admin. And then HR Success is our advanced HR software solution. And that really includes stuff like the performance reviews, that you can manage against specific goals and objectives, which, as I mentioned, are really key to helping staff feel valued. If you're interested in booking a demo of any of our solutions or starting your 14-day free trial, please check out our website. There's some links on the screen right now to our trial page and to booking a demo. If you registered with us today, then I will also be sending you a recording to watch on demand, and alongside the recording I will also be providing all registrants with a discount code, so you can get 50% off Apogee Time or Plus Time if you purchase before the end of Feb 2022. So there's also time for questions now. We've got a member of the team on hand, so what I'm going to do is there's a chat box you should be able to see on your screen. It might be below your screen or it might be to the right-hand side of your screen, but you're welcome to ask any questions. We're going to leave the broadcast open for the next 5 minutes. So yeah, if you've got any questions, please pop them in the chat box on your screen. And thank you again for listening today.